Alright, I wanted to show everybody what's in spirals. This is an unusual spiral pattern because most spiral patterns only use basically one stitch type. You know, it might be a granny or just DC or whatever, but there's nothing out there that goes through different stitch patterns. So I wanted to give that a try. I'd never made a spiral in my life, anything. So I did a 4-color spiral. Started out with the center motif. It's got some cross stitches in it, but nothing too intense. Just to give me something to work off of. And it's very important to use stitch markers when making this pattern because it's very easy to get lost. You have to be able to tell where one round ends and the next one starts. Because once you lose your place, it's hard to find it again. So always use stitch markers. A minimum of 5, one for each color. So when you're not working on one, you don't lose stitches. Then one to mark color number 1. Mark the very last stitch of your round on color number 1. So when you come around with color number 4, you know approximately where to start, but that'll let you know where one round ends and the next one starts, and it'll be the same on all 4 colors. They'll always land at the same place, no matter where you're at, and there'll always be different amounts of unworked stitches at the end of each round, so that'll change. But it's not a problem. So in the center we start with a bunch of fans, and they're pretty weird. Then we go out to some front post stitches. There's a section of them. It's 4 rounds, so each round is done in each color, and every quarter of the pattern will look different because each color will be in a different place depending on where you're looking at going around. And we go out to some hills made out of double crochets. Those are pretty basic. Then we got 4 rounds of popcorn out here. And see, this is where the darkest color starts. See, over here the dark's on the top, but over here they're on the bottom. Then we go up to some crazy chains. Then this is the wrist wrecker section. I call it that because it does a number on your wrist when you do this. If you try to do all 4 rounds of it at once, you'll pay for it later with pain in your wrist because it's made up of front post trebles, skipping 2 stitches, 2 front post trebles. Then you go back and do back post trebles. The first row goes into stitches, but after that the front post trebles go into the back post trebles of the previous round. Then the next 2 back post trebles go into the front post trebles of the previous round. So I call them a double cross. It gives a nice thickness. It's kind of like a little cable, but it will do a number on your wrist if you try to do them all at once. That's why I call them the wrist wrecker. Pretty much everybody complains about that section. But usually in my patterns, whenever I do a difficult section or something that takes a while to do, I'll go to a easy section after that to give you a break. You know, because if I did all crazy all the time, you know, it'd be too much. So I'll do a little crazy, then I'll do a little simple, then go back to crazy, and alternate it like that so you're never just doing crazy all the time. Because this goes to granny, then it goes to some basic double crochets, skipping 2 stitches, chain 2, giving you a staggered hole pattern. Then we go up to some peaks out towards the end, and some shells and shells, then some crazy chaining and starting to fill in between the peaks. Then the border on this is made up of a lot of back post stitches because I like the way these ridges come out, and this gives it the edge a little bit of weight to it, and I like a heavy edge. It helps hold things down, but these can kind of get to you if you try to do them all at the same time. It goes from the back post stitches to some normal stitches, then it repeats that all the way around from peak to peak. Then nice little scalloped edge, topped off with single crochet, and that's pretty much it. As long as you keep track of where your rounds start and stop, you'll be okay. But if you don't do that, you might not make it to the end. So a minimum of 5 stitch markers, but if you mark the last stitch on every color for every round as you do them, you'll be a lot better off. And just make sure your last stitch lands on the same spot for each color. If one of those lands in a different spot, that means something's wrong, and you got to find out what it is, because it'll throw everything else off. And another thing about this, there's another way you can spot where a round starts and stops, but it's only like this in certain places. See, right here, there's a DC6 together, but over here, there's only 4. And then the next one, there's 4. Then here we have 6 together in a different color. So that means that's where my round is starting and stopping, because in the pattern that'll be there, the different one. But the ones where there's 4 together, here and here, that means that's part of the repeat in a round. But this will let you find where a round starts and stops. It won't always be like that, but it'll help you find it if you get lost. Like here, the popcorns, where they change positions, you know your round starts and stops in here. Out here it'll be a little bit harder to tell, but always use those stitch markers, and it'll really help you succeed in completing this pattern. The hardest part about this pattern, other than finding where you started and stop a row, is keeping your 4 different yarns untangled. The way I did it was I work clockwise, starting with color 1. I'll do color 1, then rotate it. Well, I rotate it, clockwise. Do the next color, and I'll do the colors 1, 2, and 3. Then I'll reverse everything and go back to color 4 the other way. Do that, end up back at color 1. Then I'll start doing it again. I'll do the first 3 colors, keep rotating it as I do the 3 colors. Then when I need to do color 4, turn it back. If you just keep going around and around, all 4 of your colors are going to start, your yarns are going to start spiraling together, and you'll end up with a mess, because you have to keep track of your 4 colors, your yarns, and try to keep them from getting tangled up. That's the challenge. And moving this project while you're working on it, try to finish a round in all 4 colors before you stop and put it away. If you stop in the middle, you might get lost. It just makes it easier if you do a complete round in all 4 colors before you put it away. And moving it around, you also have to be careful not to turn it while you're moving it, because it'll twist your 4 yarns together, because all 4 colors stay attached throughout the entire project. It gets easier to move once you get down to like tiny little balls of yarn left, and you can just clip them to the side of the project. But when you got a full skein, it gets a little more complicated. And then when they get a partial skein and they want to collapse, you got to pay attention for that too. So just be careful when you start and stop. When you're rotating, learn to go one way, then back the other, and it'll keep your yarns from getting tangled up together. I hope some of this helps people in making their own projects. It's really interesting because it just keeps changing and changing. You know, it's not a typical spiral, and it'll let you do lots of different stitches. Every part is different all the way out. I try never to repeat the same stitch pattern once I do it. You know, there'll be 4 rows of it in a section, but once this section's done, you won't see this again later on in the pattern. So you'll always have something different to do. Thanks for watching.